Since today is Narsingh Chaturdashi, so we'll also offer some prayers to Lord Narasimha. Shri Narasimha Jai Narasimha Jai Jai Shri Narasimha Dev Pralladesha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bhringa Shri Narasimha Jai Narasimha Jai Jai Shri Narasimha Dev Pralladesha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bhringa Shri Narasimha Jai Narasimha Jai Jai Shri Narasimha Dev Pralladesha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bhringa Jai Shri Narsingh Dev Bhagwan Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, we welcome all the devotees to the morning class celebrating the very auspicious and fear-relieving appearance of Lord Narasimha Dev. We have two shlokas for chanting and then also seeing what Prabhupada has to offer to us on these shlokas. So, after we offer our prayers, kindly repeat the shlokas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we are reading from Canto 7, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 5, entitled Prahlad, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu, and text number 46 and 47 on the board. Kindly repeat. Vartamano vidure vai balopi ajadadhir ayam na vismarati me naryam shunah shepa iva prabhu aprameyanubhavoyam akutaschid bhayo maraha nunam etad virodhena mrutyurme bhavita nava. We'll see word-to-word translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Vartamanaha, being situated, avidure, not very far away, vai, indeed, balaha, a mere child, api, although, ajadadhi, complete fearlessness, I am this, na, not, vismarati, forgets, me, my, anaryam, misbehavior. Sorry, that word is may, which is translated as my. Anaryam, misbehavior. Shunah shepaha, the curved tail of a dog. Eva, exactly like. Prabhu, being able or potent. We'll check the word-to-word translation of the next shloka also. Aprameya, unlimited. Anubhavaha, glory. I am this. Akutaschid bhayaha, having no fear from any quarter. Amaraha, immortal. Nunam, definitely. Etat virodhena, because of going against him. Mrutyuhu, death. Me, my. Bhavita, maybe. Na, not. Va, or. Translation of both the shlokas. Although he is very near to me and is merely a child, he is situated in complete fearlessness. He resembles a dog's curved tail which can never be straightened. Because he never forgets my misbehavior and his connection with his master, Lord Vishnu. Translation of the next shloka. I can see that this boy's strength is unlimited, for he has not feared any of his punishments, any of my punishments. He appears immortal. Therefore, because of my enmity towards him, I shall die. Or maybe this will not take place. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Shunaha means of a dog and Shepa means tail. The example is ordinary. However, one may try to straighten a dog's tail, it is never straight but always curved. Shunaha Shepa is also the name of the second son of Ajigartha. He was sold to Harishchandra, but he later took shelter of Vishwamitra, Harishchandra's enemy, and never left his side. Hare Krishna. To discuss the appearance of Lord Narasimhadev and to discuss about the character of Prahlad Maharaj is not a task that is doable by me, but along with the order comes the empowerment. So many times it is about following the expectations of our authorities, and that's why we have agreed to speak something from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and also we have something from Brihad Bhagavatamrit, which also has a section where Prahlad Maharaj speaks with his Gurudev, Sri Narad Muni. So in today's shlokas that we discussed, the person who is speaking is Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyakashipu is saying, this child almost seems to be Amara. He cannot be killed, he is immortal. So now all of us are aware of the basic storyline. Hiranyaksha is killed by Lord Varahadev, and that's why in a spirit of vengeance, Hiranyakashipu wants to take revenge. And he wants to do tapasya. And the sole aim is that he wants to kill Lord Vishnu. And when he does tapasya, he pleases Lord Brahma, asks for immortality. And Lord Brahma says, I myself am not immortal, so how can I give you the immortality? So then quickly, using his superior intelligence, he comes up with different conditions. So some of the conditions that are mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam is, okay, if you cannot give me immortality, you give me freedom from death by 1. Anything created by you. Second, not inside my home, not outside my home. Third, not in daytime, not in nighttime. Not created by someone else also. Suddenly he realizes, maybe there is somebody else who can be his deputy to create some Prajapati or something. So not created by you. I should not be killed by any weapons. I should not be killed on the ground or in the sky. I should not be killed by any human being or an animal, because his brother was killed by an animal. I should not be killed by anything living, or I should not be killed by anything non-living. I should not be killed by demigod, a demon, or even the large snakes that are found in the subterranean regions of the universe. I should also not have any competitor. So till this point of time where he mentioned about demigods, demons and snakes, it was about immortality. Now since he is getting boons, he has also shifted his gear now. Now he is talking about death is a different thing, but what about the situation till that situation comes, or maybe some fight comes. It's not easy to survive in this world, so maybe some people will attack me. So he's saying, I don't want any competitor. Nobody should be equal to me. I should have sole lordship over all the living entities. So मृत्यु की बात तो हो गई, लेकिन मृत्यु आने के पहले जो जीवन है उसमें भी क्या क्या चाहिए देख लीजिए. No competitor, lordship over all living entities, all the ruling deities of the universe. It means all the demigods. And all the glories of that position. So very intelligent. Sometimes we could get a position. Okay, you are the ruling monarch of the whole universe, above all the demigods, above all the Gandharvas, etc., etc. But do you have the glories of that position? Do you have the facilities of that position? So he's saying, I want that position, and I also want the facilities and the glories of that position. And then, very interesting, I want all the mystic powers attained by long austerities and practice of yoga sadhana. So this is almost like when Krishna is mentioning in 2.40, Krishna is talking about devotional service. And he says, Neha bhikrama nashosti pratyavayo na vidyate. Swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So there, Krishna takes up two things about glorification of bhakti. He says, Neha abhikrama nasha asti. Nash nahi hoga. And then he says, Pratyavayo na vidyate. So, Nasha is destruction. And Pratyavaya is slowly withering away, erosion. So, Krishna says, one advantage of bhakti is, first thing, there will be no loss. Something that you have earned on the path of devotional service is your permanent asset. Now, somebody may say, but in the material world, I have always seen, things stay. They don't get destroyed, but they wither away. Slowly, the effect of time happens and kshin ho jate hain vastuein. So Krishna says, na nash hoga, na diminution hoga. No loss or no diminution. So something like that, Hiranyakashipu wants for his material affairs. I should not be killed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all those conditions. And also, till the time I'm living, no competitor. Dominion over everyone. All the tapasya, whatever fruits come by the tapasya, I want that. So who's supposed to be fearless? And who's supposed to be fearful? Brahmaji said, although this is durlabha, whatever you are asking is very durlabha, but I'll still give you these durlabha boons. If you check that shloka, where Brahmaji grants him the boons, then he uses the word durlabha twice. So 2 times he's using the word durlabha. Hiranyakashipu, what you're asking is very rare. And it is very difficult to handle. It's very difficult to handle this kind of power without getting influenced by that power and getting arrogant and proud and getting into some nonsense activities. Are you sure? He says, yes, yes. Okay, durlabha. I'll give you that. So, here is a person who's planned for immortality and is also planned for supreme dominion while staying here. Who is his competitor? Who can be his competitor? Nobody can be his competitor. All the conditions have been taken care of. So who's supposed to be fearless? Obviously, Hiranyakashipu is supposed to be fearless. But in these shlokas, this is 7.5.45, 46, 47 and 48. So, in 47, we wanted to focus. I can see this boy's strength is unlimited. Is Prahlad's strength unlimited? 5-year-old boy. Is he unlimited? Did he practice any yoga sadhana? Did he practice some Surya Namaskar, gym or something like that? There is no mention that he is having a huge muscular body or something. He might be doing some yoga for his health. I can see that this boy's strength is unlimited, for he has not feared any of my punishments. Why is his strength unlimited? Not a physical strength, but his mental strength. He's not fearful. What did I try to do? I put him at the bottom of elephants. He was fearless. I put him in a pit of deadly, huge, poisonous snakes. He was fearless. I cast some magical spells on him. He was fearless. I pushed him from the top of a hill. So in one of the other Puranas, it is mentioned when Prahlad was thrown from the top of a hill and there were a few rocks at the bottom. Then Prahlad, as he was falling down, he put his hands on his chest to protect the Supreme Lord who stays in everyone's heart. He said, when I fall down, the Supreme Lord should not face any injury. I may die, that's okay, but the Supreme Lord should not feel any injury. So he's fearless when throwing from top of a hill. I did so many illusory magic and tricks on him. That time he was fearless. I gave him poison, fearless. I starved him to death. I tried that. No food. He was fearless. I put him in situations of extreme cold. He was fearless. I put him in situations where there was strong wind blowing. He was fearless. I exposed him to deadly fire. He was fearless. I put him in water. He was fearless. I crushed him with strong stones. He was fearless. So in the first canto, when Parikshit is born, then there is a kundali that is taken. Horoscope. So when I think it is Dhaumya Rishi, who's the family priest of that family. So he says, he compares some of the qualities of Parikshit Maharaj by looking at the horoscope, and he says, this child will be as staunch a devotee as Prahlad Maharaj. Nobody can shake him from devotional service. So this is the quality of Prahlad Maharaj, and seeing this kind of fearlessness, the fearless Hiranyakashipu, who has all reasons to be fearless, is saying, he has not feared any of my punishments. In fact, he appears immortal. So who's immortal? Who got a boon from Brahmaji? Hiranyakashipu got a boon from Brahmaji. So this immortal Hiranyakashipu is getting fearful and is saying, maybe this boy is immortal. So now what is the result of that is intelligent. Therefore, because of my enmity towards him, he is immortal by my eyes. I am immortal because of Brahmaji's words. What is more important, Shabda or Pratyaksha? You are a devotee, so you will say Shabda. But if you ask a demon, demon says Shabda, well, it keeps on. I don't have so much faith. Pratyaksha, seeing is believing. So for a Hiranyakashipu, Pratyaksha is more important than Shabda, and he says, this person is fearless. And I got a boon of immortality, but I sometimes get fearful. So now I am somebody who is fearful, and he is somebody who is fearless, and I have enmity towards him. I am not going to make friendship with him. I am not going to agree to him. So in a war with somebody, Prahlad, who is immortal, as per Pratyaksha, somebody has to die. So who's that person who's going to die? Yes. But he got a boon from Brahmaji. So this is such an interesting shloka. He says, therefore, because of my enmity towards him, I shall die. Hiranyakashipu is accepting in the Srimad Bhagavatam, I may have to die. So can you imagine the kind of fearlessness that was exhibited by Prahlad Maharaj in the face of constant death, in the face of constant conspiracies by one of his dearmost family members? Why did Dhruv Maharaj, it is mentioned he was hissing like an angry snake when he went to his mother? What exactly disturbed Dhruv Maharaj? No expectations from his stepmother. Stepmothers are supposed to be cruel. But when the stepmother spoke poisonous words, the father did not speak. The father kept quiet. So sometimes we feel when we speak arrogantly, it hurts. Yes, it hurts. But sometimes when we keep quiet, when we are supposed to speak, that hurts more than those poisonous words. So Dhruv Maharaj is expecting some solace, at least by the eyes. Don't worry, we'll talk later in the evening. Today I cannot talk in front of Suruchi, who's my dear wife. There was no response from his father. How important is a father's position in a son's life? Just because the father kept quiet, he did not speak anything strange. He did not insult him. Just because he kept quiet, Dhruv Maharaj could not handle it, and Dhruv Maharaj went off to do tapasya. That father is every day coming up with different tricks to kill this child. So Prahlad did not go to the forest. First day when his father is trying to kill him, he can see the soldiers who are trying to kill me are servants of my father. So when the father keeps quiet, Dhruv Maharaj runs to the forest. He says, I can't stay here. And Prahlad Maharaj, the first time when he was attempted to be killed by his father's servants, he could have understood, right? This is a dangerous place for me. I can't stay here. Tomorrow my father, he'll try something else to kill me. So every day Prahlad is sleeping in one of his rooms in the palace, knowing for sure, just nearby is my father's palace. And in the father's palace, today evening, there's going to be a joint meeting between different associates, planning, how should we kill my son tomorrow? What different tricks can you think of? And knowing this, that there's a conspiracy going on in the neighboring room, in the neighboring palace, Prahlad Maharaj stayed there. This is the high standard of his fearlessness. It's very difficult to do this. And that's why, because Hiranyakashipu, the immortal Hiranyakashipu, has experienced this fearlessness of Prahlad, today he's thinking, maybe because of my enmity towards him, etad virodhena, I shall have to die. But then again, there is a doubt always. People who are based on pratyaksha can never be firmly situated. People who are based on shabda, they will always be sure. So because he's based on pratyaksha, then he says, or maybe this will not take place. Maybe I will die, maybe I will not die. He's still confused. So, in the 16th chapter of the Gita, in the beginning, 5 shlokas, there is a mention of divine qualities. And Sri Krishna, he starts his divine qualities by speaking Abhayam, fearlessness. And if you read the purport, then Prabhupada mentions about how fearlessness is something to be cultivated. And he's saying, somebody who wants to accept the renounced order, sannyas, should have so much faith in the Supreme Lord's protection and the Supreme Lord's maintenance that based on the faith that the Supreme Lord will protect me in all situations, he develops fearlessness. And in one class, many years back, I had heard that a sannyasi should not accept sannyas till the time he has this kind of faith that he's alone walking in the jungle without anybody. And in the jungle, he can come across a tiger or a lion. And he knows that this tiger or lion has every possibility, potential to hunt me down and rip me open and have me as his feast. But as he's looking at the tiger, as he's looking at the lion, he has faith. The Paramatma in my heart, Kayana Vacha, I am serving him in all ways. I have offered myself fully to the Supreme Lord. That same Paramatma who knows my surrender when I took sannyas is sitting in the heart of this ferocious animal also. And because I am sincere in my surrender to the Supreme Lord, the Paramatma in the heart of this tiger or this lion will never allow him to make a feast of my body. Unless somebody has this kind of strong faith and this kind of fearlessness, he should not accept sannyas. And if you see that purport 16.1 and 2, those shlokas, then Prabhupada talks about the sannyas that this is the high state of fearlessness based on faith of the Supreme Lord's protection. And that's what we can see in the case of Prahlad Maharaj. So Hiranyakashipu did all this tapasya to get fearlessness, to get security. And finally, now we see that he finally did not get his fearlessness and neither he did got any security. Whereas Prahlad Maharaj, he has developed fearlessness and he has developed security. Why is it so that somebody who planned, executed, received, finally did not achieve it? And there is somebody who never planned, who never executed, and in one sense externally never achieved it. How is he like that? So Hiranyakashipu is trying to develop fearlessness based on his position, paristhiti. And Prahlad Maharaj is trying to develop his fearlessness based on his consciousness. He never worked on the external surroundings, he worked on his internal surroundings. How much am I following the words of my Guru that were instructed to me when I was in the womb? Did I hear attentively? Am I trying to practice it sincerely? So based on consciousness, he's trying to develop his fearlessness, and that's why he got it. So recently, I came across a scientific study that was conducted in 1978. So as we all know, today's times are fearful times, not just because of the diseases, the pandemic that's going on. Before the pandemic, it's not that life was free from fear. And if the pandemic ceases by, some are saying by December, it's not that fear is going to run away from our lives. There's fear, constantly. Terrorism, threat from neighboring countries, economic threats going on, so many things. And many times we have heard His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj speaking that our consciousness matters a lot. He always focuses on this consciousness. And he says, when we come together in Sankirtan, every time we have heard His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj saying, millions of circles, please. So in this temple also, he says millions of circles. So he's saying, at least form small circles, 3 or 4 people together and dance together so that there is collective consciousness. So when we are chanting and dancing alone, we may not have that kind of absorption in the holy name, but when we are 3 or 4 people, even if one of us is more absorbed, then it rubs off on us, and then the collective consciousness of the Sankirtan can rise. So always we have seen this kind of stress. Millions of circles, please. So the study is, this is a physics-based study, that before Einstein, there is Newtonian physics. And then there is quantum physics. Quantum physics is, in very simple terms, Newtonian physics is based on a material conception of matter. The matter that we see around us is basically matter. It's gross matter. And Einstein proposed a different concept of the reality that we are seeing around. It is energy-based. It's not matter-based. And that was a very radical shift after Einstein. So they have found out there are 7.7 billion people on the world planet today. So all of us are sitting here and we have these gross bodies, which when we go deep into it, it is basically atoms, molecules, atoms. And atoms is basically a neutron with some particles going around. Sometimes it is energy-based also. So they say, if all these electrons and all these protons and all these neutrons, the physical particles, they're all clubbed together in a dense form. It means the electrons that are moving around, there is a space between the neutron and the electron. And there is a space between the first electron and the next electron, and so on. So all that empty space is taken away, and all that matter is just clubbed together. So all the human beings on this world, if their electrons, protons, and neutrons are taken together, the size of all that is less than the size of a sugar cube. Sugar cube is roughly this much. 2 cm by 2 cm by 2 cm. 8 cubic centimeter. That is the size of the matter that we see in human beings. Which means most of what we are seeing is not reality, it's actually space. And what we think as gross matter is actually our training that we have received from our childhood, from our samskaras from previous life, and whatever the world is around teaching us, it's basically energy-based. So this world is consciousness-based. So what Einstein said is now slowly being proved also. It means it's very important to not just arrange a physical position like Hiranyakashipu, but it's very important to develop a spiritual consciousness, because this world is consciousness-based. So in 1978, to test this out in reality, what they did is they arranged for 7,000 people on a different path. They were not Vaishnavas, they were Buddhists. But they got 7,000 Buddhist monks in the West together at one place. And they were asked to whole day just meditate on positivity. So they don't meditate on the form of the Supreme Lord, but they just said, let there be peace around. Let there be good consciousness around. And for 3 weeks, 7,000 meditators, their only job was to meditate on positivity in this world. So what happened? They analyzed. So they said, the global crime rate in that period came down, before and after it is roughly the same, but it came down by 16%. And the global terrorist activities, which are very prominent in certain parts of the world, certain countries of the world, it dropped by 72%. And the suicide rates in all the countries where suicides were happening also dropped. So they found out there is a strong correlation when a group of devotees, when a group of people, they come together and pray to the Supreme Lord in collective consciousness, it has a major impact on the situation of this world. No wonder Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because his Yuga avatar, he's specifically talking about Kali Yuga, he's saying Sankirtan. It's not Kirtan, it is Sankirtan. Let's come together whenever there is an opportunity, and in a collective consciousness, let's pray to the Supreme Lord. And this kind of collective consciousness, when it is worked upon, then we get a semblance of the fearlessness that is created in Prahlad. So Prahlad is somebody who has developed that kind of faith in the Supreme Lord. And that's why seeing him, a tiny child, immortal Hiranyakashipu is saying, maybe I'm going to die. So how did Prahlad develop this kind of consciousness where he has developed supreme immortality, practically, fearlessness, by hearing from his guru. So in our lives, we have 3 gurus, technically. One is called the Vartama Pradarshak Guru, the person who shows us the way. He may himself not walk on it. He may later may not walk on it. The second is the Shiksha Guru, the instructing spiritual master, who is definitely somebody who guides us on a day-to-day basis in the practicalities of devotional service. And the third person is the initiating spiritual master, the Diksha Guru. So the Diksha Guru's primary responsibility is to give us Sambandha Gyan. Because the Diksha Guru is a very elevated personality. he is situated very firmly in the sambandha with the Supreme Lord. So his primary responsibility in a disciple's life is to give us sambandha gyan. And the Shiksha Guru, his primary responsibility is to give us abhidheya gyan. Based on the sambandha that was given by the initiating spiritual master, the Diksha Guru, but Diksha Guru may not be available for a day-to-day guidance, the Shiksha Guru's primary responsibility is to develop the faith of the disciple, of the devotee, in the sambandha gyan of the Diksha Guru, given by the Diksha Guru, by giving us abhidheya gyan. Oh, Guru Maharaj, Diksha Guru spoke about this point, and then devotees are looking at each other saying, this is very high. To be a servant of servant of servant, to actually, if you think on it, this 2 or 3 servant of servant, if you do, it gets very difficult. So the job, the responsibility of the Shiksha Guru is to not give some another perspective, but to help the Shishya, to help the devotee come close and understand the teachings of the Diksha Guru in a better way. So what if we just have Diksha Guru in our life and we don't have any Shiksha Guru in our life? It sounds very attractive because I am connected only to a pure devotee and I don't want to get connected to any not so pure devotee. What is our problem is, we'll develop a lot of sambandha gyan. We'll be very clear with the concepts, the core concepts, because as high you are, that's how you focus on the basics. But we may not have understanding of how to live by those concepts on a day-to-day basis. And what if we do not have strong Shravanam from Diksha Guru and we just have a lot of attachment and lot of relationship with the Shiksha Gurus, contemporary devotees, senior devotees, who may not be on the level of the Diksha Guru, but they are very elevated. We will have a lot of practical gyan. We'll have a lot of understanding of how to deal practically in different situations, how to practice devotional service in different contradictory situations in this world. But we may not have that strong sambandha with the Supreme Lord, or we may not have that strong, immovable, unshakable sambandha with the Guru Shishya Parampara. So that's why Chaitanya Charitamrita, if you see, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he says, this is Adi Leela, beginning, first chapter, shloka number 12, 13 and 14. Yadyapi amara guru Chaitanya das, tathapi janiye ami tahara prakash. I know my spiritual master is Chaitanya Das, Nityanand Prabhu is Chaitanya Das. But you know what? I also know him. Tathapi janiye ami tahara prakash. Actually, Nityanand Prabhu, the spiritual master, is one of the plenary expansions. It is the Supreme Lord who has expanded outside in the form of the spiritual master. And if you check all these shlokas in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have one more shloka, we'll explain that. Guru Krishna Rupahana Shastrera Pramane Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Karena Bhakta Gane. If you check all these shlokas where the concept of Guru is explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will see Srila Prabhupada's purports. He says to differentiate between the Diksha Guru and the Shiksha Guru is an offense. Many times, we talk about chanting in chanting seminars and we discuss about how to improve chanting. And the first thing that is mentioned is to blaspheme. So we understand that. We don't blaspheme Vaishnavas. What is the third offense? Gurur Avagya. To disobey the instructions of the spiritual master. And many times, primarily when we read this offense, we think it is an offense to disobey the instructions of the Diksha Guru, the initiating spiritual master, which is true. But it also means to disobey the instructions of the Shiksha Guru. Why? Because based on Prabhupada's purports, Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru both are important. We cannot neglect the Diksha Guru and give more importance to the Shiksha Guru. Similarly, my dear friends, we cannot give more importance to Diksha Guru and neglect the Shiksha Guru. The advantage of Prahlad Maharaj is, yesterday Sukumar Krishna Prabhu gave all the broad understanding and nice history of Prahlad Maharaj, that Prahlad Maharaj has heard from Narad Muni for 100 celestial years. His shiksha is very prominent. And what is the effect of that shiksha? Because he heard it attentively in the womb of his mother, he did not have any anxiety. His mother had anxiety. Oh, when will Hiranyakashipu come? And I want to give birth to this child in the presence of Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu is doing tapasya for 100 celestial years. And Prahlad is in the womb. But Prahlad does not have any anxiety. So in an anxiety-free state, when Prahlad heard for 100 celestial years shiksha from Narad Muni, he could teach it, he could imbibe it, and later he could teach it to his grandson Bali. And what is the effect of good shiksha from somebody who has received good shiksha? Is that when his Diksha Guru, Shukracharya, contradicted the teachings of the Vedas and told him to disobey his own heart, to surrender to the Supreme Lord, he has two options. The whole Vedic literature focuses on Yatha Deve Tatha Guru. Shvetashvatar Upanishad, the last shloka of the Shvetashvatar Upanishad, whatever has been taught in the Shvetashvatar Upanishad, abhi last mein ye shloka mein bata rahe, whatever we have taught you, Yatha Deve Tatha Guru, Tasyaite Katithai Artha Prakashante Mahatmana. Unless somebody has faith in the Supreme Lord and simultaneous same faith in the spiritual master, only that person can understand all the Upanishad, the Shvetashvatar Upanishad. So it means there is so much importance on obeying the spiritual master. In the whole Vedic literature, you will never ever come across somebody who disrespected, disobeyed the initiating spiritual master. How can you disobey the spiritual master? So something that never happened, happened. It happened one day. And it happened in such an amazing way that it has been recorded as a good example in the Amalam Puranam. Amalam Puranam is Srimad Bhagavatam, where nothing that is mala, that nothing that is contaminated has been written there. Right from the second shloka it is mentioned. All Kaitava Dharma has been kicked out. If anything is wrong, it cannot be in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But this incident where one disciple rejected his spiritual master's teachings. He rejected his spiritual master, not alone in a private room so that nobody knows. In front of the whole assembly, he rejected his spiritual master. How can you ever reject your spiritual master? It is such an unthinkable thing. And to find the mention of this incident in the Amalam Puranam, which means this incident is very extraordinary. And how could Bali Maharaj, even today's times we can get shivers when even that thought comes of disrespecting the spiritual master. How can Bali Maharaj, in so many millenniums ago in Satya Yuga, he can, in front of everyone, disrespect and disobey, not disrespect, disobey his spiritual master, or based on what? Based on the shiksha that he got from his grandfather, Prahlad Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj, I have not read Narasimha Puran, but I'm just thinking, usually we have seen when we go to some family's place, there is a grandfather. And the grandfather has a lot of affection for the small children playing around. So I'm just imagining Bali, his grandson, is moving around in the home. And Prahlad Maharaj is grandfather and is there. And he says, Bali, please come. And Bali comes there and says, I want to tell you something today. When you grow up, you do whatever you want. You are an ambitious person yourself. But please never ever miss a chance to surrender to the Supreme Lord. And grandfather, why are you telling me this? He says, because I myself have done this. I was born in a demoniac family, and my father was so much against Vishnu, against surrender to Vishnu, and he so many times tried to kill me just for one mistake that I did. What is that? I served Lord Vishnu. And against all that thing that he did to me, I always maintained my fidelity. I always maintained my loyalty to the Supreme Lord. This is my one teaching that I want to give to you, my dear grandson. So if you check the 8th canto, then the fight that happens between Bali Maharaj and the demigods, there is a Vishwajit Yagya that is done. And Bali Maharaj is going out to conquer the demigods. And that time, after that Yagya, all auspiciousness is created. Shukracharya gives him a conch shell to blow. And that conch shell, when Bali Maharaj blows outside the heavenly planets, just by the sound of that conch shell, which has been imbued by the power of Shukracharya, all the demigods run away. That's the power of that conch shell. So if you read that section, you will see how Bali Maharaj, before he went to attack the demigods, Prahlad Maharaj's grandfather is also present there, and Prahlad Maharaj offers him a garland of victory. So Prahlad Maharaj knows he's going to attack the demigods, but he knows this is a demoniac tendency in the heart. So what can be done? He cannot be stopped. But he says, do whatever you want. You attack the demigods because that may be the need of the hour based on your ambition, based on the situation. But sometimes the demigods also act in a way that they should not act. Remember one thing, Bali. Please never ever miss a chance to surrender to the Supreme Lord. So this kind of shiksha that went into the heart of Bali Maharaj in his whole childhood days gave him the strength to disobey his Diksha Guru, who is the cause of his victory. If you read the 8th canto, there is a situation where it is mentioned in one war with the demigods, Bali was killed. Bali had died. And Shukracharya, by his yogic powers, revived a dead person. His life is dependent on Shukracharya. His victory, his fame, his success is dependent on Shukracharya. Shukracharya is a spiritual master. Can you imagine the situation of Bali when Shukracharya objects and says, please don't give to Vishnu? His life revived by him, his success given by him, initiating spiritual master, seminally. And inside in his heart, in his childhood days, he has received Shiksha from Prahlad Maharaj. And that Shiksha became more prominent than Diksha. So how important is good Diksha? Definitely. But how important is good Shiksha? So when Shiksha and Diksha combine together, it's a very amazing thing that can happen. And that is what happened in Prahlad's life, that Prahlad did not receive contradictory Diksha and Shiksha. His Diksha and Shiksha came from the same person, Narad Muni. And that's why he's in a fearless situation. That's why his consciousness is very clear. So the question comes, why did Shukracharya stop Bali from surrendering? Because after Bali Maharaj surrenders and Bali Maharaj is given Sutala Loka in reward, Vamandev is still standing there, and Vamandev asks Shukracharya, who's still waiting there, he's not gone to Sutala Loka. He says, there was a yajna going on, and I came and I asked for bhiksha, and then I received bhiksha, and then a lot of things happened. 2 steps, 3rd step, and now he's conquered, and now I have sent him to Sutala Loka. The yajna did not complete. Are there any discrepancies that were left there in the yajna? Please complete those discrepancies. And Shukracharya answers, my dear Lord, you are the creator, the maintainer and annihilator of everything. If you are present at some place, how can there be discrepancy? And then he says, mantratas tantratas chidram. If in any chanting of any Vedic mantras, if there are some faults, some discrepancies, all those chidras, all those faults can be overcome. Nama Sankirtanam Tava. Just by doing Nama Sankirtan of your holy names, all the faults are destroyed. So it means Shukracharya is not in ignorance. Shukracharya knows the position of the Supreme Lord. He knows Vishnu. He knows the power of Vishnu. He knows the power of chanting the holy names of Vishnu. Why did he stop? It means this is not in ignorance. Sometimes if we do mistakes in ignorance, they can be pardoned. But Shukracharya's mistake is in full knowledge. So why did he do that? He did it because he was attached to his position. Again, we come to the word position. We started off from position and consciousness. Hiranyakashipu created a position of fearlessness, but eventually landed in a situation of fearfulness. So similarly, Shukracharya also, he has created a position of fearlessness, not based on his consciousness of surrender to Vishnu. He has created his fearlessness based on the position of being the initiating spiritual master, the guide, the instructor of Bali Maharaj. And because he has created a situation of fearlessness based on position, not based on consciousness, that position of fearlessness is shaky. If he surrenders everything to Vishnu, what about me? Will I get any position? All of us know about Shri Radha Govindji. Radha Govindji, the worshipable deities of Srila Rupa Goswami, were originally in Vrindavan. At one point of time, because of the situational emergency, they were shifted to Jaipur. So when they were shifted to Jaipur, the king, the local king there, his name was Jai Singh II. So this Jai Singh, his wife, she was connected to one of the sampradayas. We don't want to purposefully mention because we don't want to divert the attention of the discussion to that topic. But she was attached to one another sampradaya. And in those days, that sampradaya gurus, the Vaishnava, they were Vaishnava sampradaya. They were there in Jaipur and they had lot of influence on the running of the royal affairs, the decisions that were taken, because the queen belongs to that sampradaya. But when the Radha Govindji came, this king developed unlimited attraction to Shri Radha Govindji. So the story goes that in his childhood, this small child who later became Jai Singh II and who received Radha Govindji and he created an entire city, keeping Radha Govindji in the center and named that city Jaipur. So Jaipur is called Jaipur in connection to Radha Govindji. So when he was a small child, he was taken by his mother and father to Vrindavan. And in his childhood days, he had taken darshan of Radha Govindji, and from those days, he was attracted to Radha Govindji and he was thinking about Radha Govindji. And when he received the news that because of certain situations that Radha Govindji, the most attractive Radha Govindji are coming to Jaipur, he said, this is my fortune. And then he created an entire city around Radha Govindji, which is Jaipur today. So the point is, this king, he started developing more and more attraction for Radha Govindji, and along with Radha Govindji from Vrindavan, who came? Their pujaris came. Now, who were those pujaris? In Gaudiya line. So Gaudiya pujaris carried Radha Govindji from Vrindavan to Jaipur, and because he's attracted to Radha Govindji, and Radha Govindji also, when he was out on the outskirts of the city, he told this king in a dream, I'm coming to your city. Do you have a suitable place for me to stay? And what did the king do? The king moved out of his palace. And he said, this palace is for Radha Govindji, I will construct a new palace. So if you go to Jaipur today, the temple where Radha Govindji is there, that is the original place of staying of the king. And now he's built another palace next to that. And if you look at that bedroom of the king, even today, when he would get up from his bed, then from his big window, he could directly take darshan of Radha Govindji. He constructed his palace in that way. So he started getting influenced by these Gaudiyas because he would go to take darshan of Radha Govindji. And those other devotees, they started feeling threatened. So because they started feeling threatened, what to do then? Then they say, my dear queen, actually, you see this Radha Govindji being worshipped together, but Radharani never got married to Krishna. You check out all the scriptures. So yes, externally they never got married. So then they said, if they never got married, how can you keep Radharani and Govindji next to each other? They have to be taken away. It's not a proper relationship. And that's why Radharani was taken away. So why Radharani was taken away? Because some people felt threatened because their position of close proximity to the king. They felt it can get affected, and that's why they took out Radharani away. And when this news went to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they said, please come and defend this tattva of Radharani being with Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his own Rasika way, said, don't worry, Radharani has gone into a Man Leela. This happens sometimes. Very soon Radharani will come back with Govindji. And then he requested his disciple, Baldev Vidyabhushan, that please go and do the needful. And Baldev Vidyabhushan came at Galtaji. There was a debate, and then Radharani was again kept back with Radha Govindji. So why did we mention this is, we mentioned how people, they feel threatened when they see somebody else becoming more influential on the person whom we are trying to control. The main reason why Manthara came up with all that poison and put it in the ears of Kaikeyi, there was no basis to it. Why did she speak? She spoke because she was the chief assistant and the chief dasi of Kaikeyi. And she's thinking, if Ram becomes the heir, then Ram's mother Kaushalya becomes the main queen. And if she becomes the main queen, then her dasi will become the most important person. So it's a competition between two dasis actually. And because of the competition between two dasis, she thinks, I should not lose my position of close proximity to Kaikeyi. And for that to happen, then so many things have to happen. So this is how people feel threatened. But somebody who is in proper knowledge, received in proper shiksha, he does not feel threatened. So knowledge gives proper consciousness, and proper consciousness gives us fearlessness. In a circus sometimes, there is somebody who's up there and he's going like a trapeze artist. He jumps, he's in the air for some time, and then suddenly one bar comes and he catches onto that. How come he's fearless? He's fearless because he has been told, don't worry, everything is going on in a coordinated manner, but just God forbid, galti se agar kuch galti ho gayi. And if something goes wrong, even if you fall down, there is a huge net that is put. A huge net is put, you will not fall to the ground. You become fearless in doing that. So when a devotee has proper shiksha, based on proper diksha, then he has his proper sambandha gyan, he has proper abhidaya gyan, and he knows nothing will happen. Sometimes there is a tall building that is burning, and people need to be rescued. So the fireman will go inside and ask somebody to hold a big bed sheet or something down and saying jump. And this is happening for the first time in that person's life. He's looking at the ground level and saying, I'm on 6th floor, I'm on 8th floor, how can I jump? He says, you see the sheet there? It's not cloth. It won't tear when you fall in it. It's a rubber extensible sheet. Oh, then he gets jnana. Then he gets proper shiksha. He has diksha. He has the sambandha gyan. That firefighter means he wants to save me. But if that proper shiksha is not there, proper conception is not given to him, he will not jump. So Prahlad Maharaj, his advantage is that he has proper shiksha received for 100 celestial years, and that's why he is fearless. So Lord Narsimhadev, when he appears, he is quite fearful. He is quite ferocious. And after he has ripped open Hiranyakashipu, even after that, Lord Brahma, all the demigods, Lord Shiva, including his own consort Lakshmi Devi, is totally fearful. They say, I have never seen Lord Narsimha in this form. But then they have faith on Prahlad. So Brahmaji says, he has appeared for your benefit. You please go and please offer prayers. And Kritanjali, with hands folded, Prahlad Maharaj in a completely fearless position goes in front of Lord Narsimhadev and offers his prayers. So if you check that purport, Prabhupada quotes a very beautiful shloka which I never saw from this perspective. He says, Narayana parasarve na kutaschana bibhyati swarga apavarga narkeshu api tulyartha darshina. So whenever I have read this shloka, I always felt swarga. Okay, a devotee is not fearful in swarga. He does not feel that he can get enticed by swarga. One of the reasons why Angad, when he was requested, can you jump across to Lanka? So many people were asked. So some of them said, we can't jump 100 yojanas, we can jump 80. Somebody said 20, 30. Angad was a young boy. He was the youngest amongst them. So Angad ko pucha tha, will you jump? He said, I can go one way. But I don't have sufficient strength to come back. So why? He's young. He's not like Jambavan who says, I'm old. Why did he not? Because he thought, I might have the strength to jump physically, but you know, Ravan's Nagari, Lanka, is actually full of sensual pleasures. It's like Las Vegas. Sin city. So if Ravan's city is sin city, when I jump there, because I'm a young boy, and I have not yet controlled my senses, what if I get trapped there? I don't know. So one of the reasons why Angad said, I don't want to jump there is not because of a loss of physical strength, but he said that because he was not sure that he will get enticed. He can get free from the enticement here. So yes, Swarga. Then Apavarga is liberation. The pure devotees, they do not mind liberation. And then it is saying, Narkeshu. They can even go to the hellish planets. But I never saw this shloka from this perspective, that even in the presence of the most fearsome form of the Lord, when everyone is just getting terrified by the roars, so many Rakshasis in Hiranyakashipu's land, they were carrying baby Rakshasas in their womb, and just by the roar of Lord Narsimhadev, they had miscarriages. That was the kind of roar of Lord Narsimhadev. And this small child Prahlad, fixed up in his Diksha and Shiksha, he goes in front of Lord Narsimhadev and offers prayers. And if you check the shlokas, Lord Narsimhadev is so happy to see Prahlad offering obeisances. He picks up Prahlad and puts his hand on the head of Prahlad. And you check the shloka, it says, Krita Abhayam. Actually, Lord Narsimhadev granted fearlessness to Prahlad by putting his hand. That's what Shukdev Goswami is saying. But even before he granted fearlessness to Prahlad by placing his hand on his head, Prahlad was already fearless. So if before Lord Narsimhadev has granted him fearless, he is fearless, what is the source of his fearlessness? Source of his fearlessness is the teachings that he received from his Guru. So, Bhagavad Gita 7.1 is that shloka on which Srila Prabhupada has spoken most number of lectures on Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada did not speak on Man Mana Bhava Mad Bhakto. Prabhupada did not speak on Sarva Dharman Parityajya. What is 7.1? Maya Sakta Manah Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashraya Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gyasasi Tachrunu. Please listen from me, Arjun, if you want to know me without doubts and you want to know me completely. Samagram Asamshayam. So you say, okay, simple. Just sit there and you hear. 7.3, just one shloka later. What does Krishna say? He says, Manushyanam sahastreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tatvatah. He says, out of millions of human beings, one endeavors for perfection. And out of millions who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Just one shloka back he mentioned. You want to know me in truth? Hear about me. And in 7.3, he's giving a contrast to that. Although this process of knowing about me without doubts and completely is so popular and is so easy, Shravanam from a proper bona fide person, Shiksha. But, he says, most people don't do it. And that's why Manushyanam Sahastreshu. So this 7.3. Then in the same chapter, there is 7.19. 7.19 is Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan mam prapadyate. Somebody in knowledge actually surrenders to me. Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma, not durlabha, sudurlabha. Again in 7.19 he says, very few people surrender to me. Why? If they have jnana, if they have heard properly, they will surrender. Though who is not jnanavan, he will not surrender. Again in 7.26, same chapter, 4 times he has spoken on this concept. How it is so difficult for people to hear about me. And just by hearing about me, they can know me in full. 7.26 he says, Vedaham samatitani vartamanani cha Arjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu veda na kaschana. I know future, I know present, I know past, I know everything about everyone. Mam tu veda na kaschana, but hardly anyone knows me. Can you imagine 7.3, 7.19, 7.26, he says the rarity of knowing Krishna, but he has opened the chapter by speaking about how to know Krishna. And that's why Prabhupada, there are many other shlokas that feel important to you and me, but if you ask Prabhupada, Prabhupada says, the way to know Krishna is to sit and hear about Krishna from the proper person. So, in 7.10.14, this is Lord Narasimhadev speaking, Bhagavatam, he says, one who always remembers your activities and my activities. So the way to worship Lord Narasimha is to remember Lord Narasimha's activities definitely, but as per him himself, he says, one who always remembers your activities, he mentions Prahlad's activities first, and my activities also, and who chants the prayers you have offered, becomes free in due course of time from the reactions of material activities. So Narasimhadev is saying, the way to understand me is to always remember the activities of Prahlad and also my activities. In 7.10.21 of the Bhagavatam, Lord Narasimhadev is saying, this is the last line that is speaking to Prahlad. Those who follow your example will become my pure devotees. You are the best example of my devotee, and others should follow your footsteps. So what does it mean when Lord Narasimha is saying we should follow the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj? Srila Madhvacharya, he quotes one shloka, this is from Brihad Bhagavatamrit, in one of the purports. Gopi Parandan Prabhu has quoted Madhvacharya, and Madhvacharya is quoting from Skanda Puran, where it is mentioned, of all the 12 Mahajanas, all are worshipable, but Madhvacharya takes one shloka from Skanda Puran which says, of all the 12 Mahajans, the best is Prahlad Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj's position is really very, the demons worship him, the demigods worship him, the Vaishnavas worship him. It's very interesting how one time there was an attempted ban on Bhagavad Gita in Russia. They wanted this Hindu scripture to go out, gaining popularity, many people turning to Vaishnavism. This should be thrown out. So one of the arguments that they posted in the court as a case against the Bhagavad Gita is, they said, just see what their Lord Krishna is speaking. Daityanam Prahladosmi. The translation, 10th chapter shloka is, amongst the demons, I am Prahlad. So they say, just see their God. He's saying, among the demons. So he is a demon, and these Hindus are worshipping a demon. They didn't understand among the demons and Prahlad means among the demons, surrounded by mud, this Prahlad has been like a lotus flower, untouched by all that mud. That is the supreme example of Prahlad Maharaj. So here we are saying, Lord Narasimha is saying, you are the best example, and devotees should follow your example. So when we hear this, when we read this in the Bhagavatam, we will think, so what is the example of Prahlad Maharaj to follow? What is Prahlad Maharaj primarily known for? Prahlad Maharaj is primarily known for undergoing a lot of difficulties and undergoing torture in different ways. Is that what Narasimhadev is speaking to us? To follow the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj, is that what Lord Narasimhadev is speaking to us, that we should also undergo torture? If somebody is tortured, our mother and father are not like Hiranyakashipu and Kayadu, we should get into a position. No, Narasimhadev said we should go into footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj. The footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj are not to undergo the torture. That is situational. The footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj is, how did he receive the teachings of his Guru? How did he remember those teachings? And how in the most terrible situations, he tried his best to live by those teachings. So the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj are not to undergo torture. The footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj is to give proper importance to Diksha and Shiksha, and to live by those teachings, and in that way, on the basis of the proper consciousness, develop fearlessness. So, in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj in the 9th chapter of the 7th canto, I'm just taking a synopsis, we don't want to read the text time. But the first words that come out of his mouth is, how is it possible for me to please you, O Lord, when Brahma, Daya, Suragana, all these demigods are there, they could not please you with their words. They are situated in Sattva Guna. I am born in a demoniac family. How is it possible for me to please you? But I know simply by devotional service, one can please you. Somebody who has wealth, aristocratic family, beauty, austerity, physical strength, education, sensory expertise, bodily luster, influence, intelligence, mystic power, he cannot satisfy you with his externals. But Gajendra, Gajayuthapaya, the Gajendra, he did devotional service. He had none of this, but he could please you, so I can also please you. Brahma, a Brahman who is not a devotee, cannot even purify himself. Where is the question of pleasing you? Whereas sometimes a person born in a low family, if he's a devotee, he can purify his entire family. The offering of prayers to the Supreme Lord is for the benefit not of the receiver, but of the person who's praying. These are the 4 verses that he chants in the beginning. And then 5th, he says, Tasmadaham vigata viklava ishwarasya. He says, although my dear Lord Narasimha, I am born in a demoniac family, but let me try my best to offer you prayers. Let me try my best to offer you prayers, and I know that you will accept it. So this translation we'll read as it is. Although I am born in a demoniac family, I may offer prayers with full endeavor as far as my intelligence allows. Anyone who has been forced by ignorance to enter the material world may be purified of material life if he offers prayers and hears the Lord's glories. The hope in Prahlad, the first 4 shlokas that he chants, the prayers, he says, it looks very difficult considering my birth and considering my situation. But the hope that comes in Prahlad Maharaj's words when he's offering himself to Lord Narasimhadev is based on this. If you offer prayers and if you hear the glories of the Supreme Lord. So again, importance is given to Shravanam. So the last shloka of Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, this is 7.9.50. It started with Shravanam and now this is the last shloka. Therefore, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all persons to whom prayers are offered, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, because without rendering 6 kinds of devotional service unto you, which are the 6 he will mention, and none of them are related to undergoing torture physically, or related to staying in the home of somebody who's trying to kill you. So if somebody is trying to kill us, we should go away. That's not trying to follow the footsteps of Dhruv Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj. 6 activities that Prahlad is saying. Offering prayers, dedicating all results of activities, worshipping you, working on your behalf. Working on your behalf. Devotional service. Always remembering your lotus feet. And 6th, hearing about your glories. Without rendering 6 kinds of devotional service unto you, who can achieve that which is meant for Paramhamsas? It means if you offer these 6 activities that are mentioned in the 50th shloka of the 9th chapter of the 7th canto, very easy. Dedicate, work for Krishna, hear his glories, offer prayers, worship Krishna. If we can do this, he says, something that is attainable for the Paramhamsas is attainable for us. So following in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj is not very difficult. Following in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj is 7.1 that Krishna mentions in the Gita. As we are discussing about Prahlad Maharaj, we will think, how come of all the 12 Mahajans, Prahlad Maharaj is the best? What happened to the other Mahajans? Are they less? Is it that they didn't do any bhakti? In fact, we have heard of Bali Maharaj, Atma Nivedanam is the most difficult. So if Bali Maharaj is the Acharya and the emblem of Atma Nivedanam, he also needs to be glorified. So on what basis is Madhvacharya, Shripad Madhvacharya mentioning this? So Gopi Parandhan Prabhu, in one of the purports of Brihad Bhagavatamrit, he takes this point and he says, there are some similar verses like this where one devotee is highlighted more than another devotee. So from 11th canto, this is Lord Krishna glorifying Uddhava. What does he say? Na tatha me priyatama atma yonirna shankaraha na cha sankarshano na shrir Naivatmana cha yatha bhavan. He's mentioning Atma Yoni is Lord Brahma. Oh Uddhava, Lord Brahma is not so dear to me. Na Shankaraha, Lord Shiva is not so dear to me. Na Sankarshana, Lord Balaram is not so dear to me. Na Shrir, Lakshmi Devi is not so dear to me as you are dear to me. So, अरे ये भी तो भक्त है, ये भी तो सेवा कर रहे हैं. Why is it like this? And then in 9th canto, Lord Vishnu is speaking to Durvasa Rishi. What does he say? Naham atmanam asha se madbhaktair sadhubhir vina shriyam cha atyantikim brahman yesham gatimaham para. He says, my dear Durvasa Rishi, you know how dear are devotees like Ambarish to me? Even I myself am not so dear to me, and even Goddess Lakshmi is not so dear to me. The Goddess Lakshmi we many times glorify in a discussion related to her. Goddess Lakshmi is so dear to Lord Vishnu that she, this somewhere in the 3rd canto or something, that she, if you ask her, where do you want to be? She wants to be at the feet of Lord Vishnu, massaging his feet. But Lord Vishnu says, you're such a sincere devotee, I would not like to keep you at my feet, I'll give you a position on my heart. So in the form of Shri Vatsa, Lakshmi Devi sits on the heart of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu wants to give a very close place to her, to his heart. So Lord glorifies Lakshmi Devi in one place, and now here he's saying that sadhu bhi vina. I am not attached to Lakshmi Devi, I am not attached to myself. So Gopi Parandan Prabhu takes this point and says, somewhere Uddhava is glorified more than others, sometimes Prahlad is glorified more than others. Why is it like this? So he says, actually, Lord Balaram is constitutionally the first expansion of Lord Krishna. Yes? And Lakshmi Devi, she is the internal energy of Lord Krishna. Shankara is basically one form of the Lord who has been existing to interact with the material energy, because the Supreme Lord does not want to interact with the material energy. In one sense, it means these devotees, Sankarshana, Lakshmi Devi, and Lord Shiva, they did not ever undergo difficulties in their life. They had to take risks in their lives. They never had to sacrifice their comforts. They never had to sacrifice their situation in order to gain the favor of the Lord. As soon as they were existing, they had the favor of the Lord because they have that position. So he uses the word new devotees in inverted commas. In that sense, Prahlad Maharaj is not somebody who from that point of time, the beginning of time, like Lord Balaram, Lakshmi Devi or Lord Shankar, it's not that Prahlad Maharaj has been there in that situation. Prahlad Maharaj, to remain situated in a position of closeness to Lord Vishnu, had to undergo a lot of difficulties. Uddhava has to carry out the orders of Lord Krishna that you go and stay in this world. I'm not going to carry you to the spiritual world. You have to carry out an order. It's very difficult for Uddhav. And if you check out the section, then Uddhav, obeying the orders of Lord Krishna, went in the direction of Badrika Ashram. Midway, he could not control himself. He has so much sneha, he has so much affection for Lord Krishna. Midway, he came back. And that is the section where Lord Krishna, there is a section where Vidura is being Maitreya Rishi is being explained. That's in the 3rd canto. So that section happened when, after the Uddhav Gita, Uddhav has been told to go, but he returns back. So Uddhav, Prahlad, and these kind of devotees who are glorified in certain sections of the Bhagavatam, that you are much greater than. Why? The Supreme Lord is just overwhelmed by seeing these devotees had to sacrifice a lot of things to gain my favor. It's not that Lord Balaram is not important. It's not that. It's a bhava, and we should understand it properly. So this is how Lord Prahlad is very dear to the Supreme Lord. There is a story that is mentioned in Vamana Purana. So in Vamana Purana and many other Puranas, this story is mentioned that Prahlad one time from Sutala Loka, because he's staying there with Bali Maharaj, he one day develops a desire to get darshan of the Supreme Lord, Pitavasa. Pitavasa literally means yellow clothes. And he heard that Pitavasa, the Supreme Lord, is staying in Naimisharanya. And he wants to take darshan of that Lord. So he goes from Sutala Loka to Naimisharanya forest. And when he goes there, on the way, he sees one renunciant. He's a sadhu. And that sadhu has weapons. He has a bow and an arrow. And Prahlad Maharaj, he knows Varnashram Dharma. He knows what is right, what is wrong. So he says, this seems to be some dhongi sadhu. This seems to be somebody who's not practicing the proper principles of dharma. Why is he carrying bow and arrow. And Prahlad Maharaj challenges this sadhu for a fight. And there is a fight between this sadhu and Prahlad Maharaj. And for many, many days, Prahlad Maharaj cannot win. And Prahlad Maharaj is thinking, how can somebody like me not win? And one day in the morning, before he begins his fight, he offers a flower garland to his worshipable deity. And then when he looks at that person, when he's about to fight, he sees the same garland that he put around his deity, around this sadhu's neck. And then he understands that he is the same Supreme Lord who wanted to test me. And Prahlad falls at his feet and he says, please forgive me for trying to fight with you. The Supreme Lord says no. And then Prahlad Maharaj says, it is the duty of a Kshatriya to never go back on his promise. So if there is a fight, either he wins over that person or he gets killed. Yuddhecha apalayanam, 18.43. So if Yuddhecha apalayanam, he cannot run away. But I cannot kill you. How can I kill you? But I cannot go back on my promise. How to understand this? So the Supreme Lord tells Prahlad Maharaj, don't worry, I am conquered by you. I am conquered by you. You conquered me. So your fame is intact and also you don't have to kill me. I am conquered by you. And this way, the Supreme Lord, Pitavasa, he glorified Prahlad Maharaj's extraordinary position. What did you not undergo to get me? And by that you have actually won my heart. So Narad Muni himself, he is the Shiksha Guru to Prahlad Maharaj. And how did he become Narad Muni? Just for a few moments, we'll go to his previous life. He is the son of a simple maid, not coming from a very highly aristocratic family, not a Brahman family, not a Kshatriya family, not a Vaishya family. His mother is a simple housemaid. And by fortune, Yadrichaya, some Bhakti Vedanta sages come to their homes and she has that faith in those Bhakti Vedantas. She requests them to stay. For 4 months they stay there and that small boy, he serves them. And by serving them, he gets affinity for them and he hears from them. So many times Narad Muni is saying, in that association and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna, and thus listening attentively, my taste for hearing of personality of Godhead increased at every step. And by hearing from those, my Rajoguna and Tamoguna destroyed. I could understand clearly the influence of energy of Lord Krishna, creator, maintainer, annihilator of everything. And by knowing that, one may return to him and personally meet him. And then he says, by regularly hearing from them, and once I took some maha from them, I developed a very high consciousness, ruchi prajayat. I developed very strong affinity for the Supreme Lord. So here is Narad Muni, who was a simple boy, but by hearing from the Bhakti Vedantas, he became Narad Muni. And that Narad Muni gave Shiksha to Prahlad Maharaj. And that Prahlad Maharaj, when he heard Shiksha attentively from Narad Muni, he became some kind of a natural Shiksha Guru. Guru nasasyat, Pita nasasyat, Janani nasasyat. So he became a natural Swajano nasasyat. So Rishabh Dev is speaking, Swajano nasasyat. Swajana means relatives. One should not become a relative if you cannot, na mochayet samupeta mrutyam, you cannot deliver a person from death. So an ideal relative is grandfather. And Prahlad Maharaj became that right Swajana. He became the right grandfather for Bali Maharaj, based on which he could deliver his grandson. He gave him so much strength to defy the orders of his initiating spiritual master and win the heart of Lord Vaman Dev. So we can say Narad Muni became Narad Muni based on Shravanam. Prahlad Maharaj became Prahlad Maharaj based on Shravanam and then Smaranam. So of the 9 processes, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, yes? These are the 9 processes. Starts with Shravanam. So Narad Muni, the first person, is Shravanam. And then he becomes Narad Muni. And then he gave his teachings to Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj heard and then lived by those teachings. So he became an Acharya of Smaranam. And then he gave those teachings again to his grandson, Bali Maharaj. And Bali Maharaj became an Acharya of the last phase, which is Atmanivedanam. So how amazing in this is this potency of proper hearing from bona fide personalities, that 3 gurus in Shiksha line, they really went from Shravanam to Smaranam to Atmanivedanam. So it is mentioned in this book called Shiksha Guru by Srila Shivram Maharaj. I was not aware of this. Probably you are aware of this. That the initiating spiritual master of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur was Bipin Bihari Goswami ji. And Bipin Bihari Goswami ji had a certain concept of the position of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Even today, some people around Vrindavan area, they do not have clear understanding of the position of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami because he came from a Kayastha background. And because he came from a Kayastha background, sometimes some foolish people, they say, oh, he is Das Goswami. They give him a lower status than the other Goswamis, they are from Brahman families. So that casteism, we should never enter Vaishnavism, sometimes enters. So because Bhakti Vinod Thakur had differences of opinion with his initiating spiritual master Bipin Bihari Goswami over the position of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, he stopped following him and he instead took shelter of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So if you check out the Guru Shishya Parampara, the Guru of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur in Bhagavad Gita, just opposite the first shloka, first chapter, where the entire Guru Shishya Parampara is mentioned, Bipin Bihari Goswami's name is not mentioned. The name that is mentioned is Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. On the altar also we have Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So that's how important it is to understand. And in this way, when everything is even snatched away from Bali Maharaj shows extraordinary consciousness. And he says, this is your mercy on me, just like Dhanvantri. He treats the disease. Similarly, my dear Vaman Dev, you are the same Dhanvantri who has come in the form of a physician and you are curing the disease of my pride. I had become proud about my opulence and you are taking it away. So, let's discuss for some time on the consciousness of Prahlad Maharaj. We discussed so much about Prahlad Maharaj's high fortune and how Madhvacharya is saying he is one of the best devotees, and we also had some discussion related to that. So this discussion that we are going to discuss now is from Brihad Bhagavatamrit, where Prahlad Maharaj talks about his consciousness when he hears everyone glorifying him. So before visiting Prahlad Maharaj, Narad Muni has visited Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva has with all his mouths glorified Prahlad Maharaj. And Narad Muni is saying, you are so fortunate. You are a special devotee of the Supreme Lord. So he says, different points. You are talking about how I was preaching to my batchmates and my classmates. Actually, isn't it true that exalted devotees should not be told to preach to small kids? So, the right person to preach was Narad Muni. Narad Muni is my guru. But how can I tell Narad Muni to speak to my batchmates, the school kids? They are immature. I don't want to waste Narad Muni's time. As a deputy, उनका प्रतिनिधित्व करते हुए मैंने प्रचार किया, मैंने प्रचार नहीं किया. Please don't say that Prahlad is so amazing that at the age of 5 in his school break time, lunch time, he was preaching. I was not preaching. The right person to preach was Narad Muni, but he was not available and I should not ask him to preach. I was working on his behalf. I was his deputy. So that shows the high consciousness of Prahlad Maharaj. Then he says, you were glorifying me that whenever I got an opportunity, I was dancing and jumping and I was so happy in Kirtan and I was teaching that Kirtan to others. He says, these external signs of ecstasy do not prove anything inside the heart. Actually, that was my sadhana. Isn't it mentioned that when Kirtan is going on, we should take participation in that Kirtan? Isn't it mentioned that when Kirtan is going on, we should enthusiastically participate in the Kirtan, even if we don't feel enthusiastic? So that dancing and chanting and jumping in Kirtan was not a symptom of my ecstasy. It was my sadhana. And then he says, if actually I was very, very dear to the Supreme Lord, why did the Supreme Lord quickly disappear? The Supreme Lord came, he killed Hiranyakashipu, he accepted my prayers, and then he fondled me, he moved his hand over my head. He did not give me any seva. You know why? Because when you look at somebody as a small child, ye to nadan bachcha hai. You don't give him some seva because you don't have faith on him that he will do that seva properly. You just give love to him. So what did Narasimhadev do to me? Narasimhadev, like a mother fondles a child. Prem diya unhone. But he did not give me any seva. You know why? He does not trust me that I can do some seva. Just look at Lord Ramchandra. Lord Ramchandra gave so much love and he also gave so much seva to Hanumanji. Hanumanji is a much better devotee than me. So what a consciousness that Prahlad Maharaj has. And then he says, actually, just look at me. I received so much from my Guru and I tried to please Lord Narasimhadev, and I tried to pass on those teachings to Bali Maharaj, and you are glorifying me that Bali Maharaj is in my family. But I can tell you one more person who is in my family. That person is Bali Maharaj's son, Banasur. So 10th canto, Krishna Leela, chapter number 62, describes the marriage between Usha and Aniruddha. Aniruddha is the son of Pradyumna. Pradyumna is the son of Rukmini and Krishna. He is the grandson of Lord Krishna. So Banasur is the son of Bali Maharaj. And he had seen how his father had won the favor of the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord, Vamandev, had told him, I will become a guard of your home residence in Sutalaloka. So Banasur, somehow he did not have affection for the Supreme Lord, and he became a devotee of Lord Shiva. And by the mercy of Lord Shiva, he got 1,000 arms. But as we were describing, if you're not attached to the Supreme Lord, you do not have the proper consciousness. And Banasur one day, what would he do with those 1,000 arms? He would go around smashing mountains. He would see a mountain, he'll just start punching on those mountains. He would see a big tree, he would uproot those trees. One day, with those 1,000 well-built huge arms, which he got by the mercy of Lord Shiva, he went to Lord Shiva. And he says, my dear Lord Shiva, I have got so much strength, but I don't have a suitable opponent to use this strength. And I saw everyone in this world, I see only one person who is fit for fighting with this strength. And Lord Shiva is looking at him. And Banasur says, that person is you. He says, आपसे वरदान मिला है, अभी आपके ऊपर इस्तेमाल करूंगा, आपसे ही लड़ाई करूंगा, I'll try to fight with you. Lord Shiva is so much offended by this. Lord Shiva is so much angry with this. He says, you proud demon, one day you will get somebody fit for fighting. You say, you don't see anybody, na? You will get somebody better than me. Wait for that moment. And Banasur goes away. And then his daughter, Usha, falls in love with the grandson of Krishna, Aniruddha. And she is kidnapped by one of his sakhis, Chitralekha. And she is brought in a mystic way from Dwarka to Shonitapur. Shonitapur is the place where Banasur is staying. And one day, this is reported that there is a young boy inside your daughter's quarters before marriage. So this was reported to Banasur. Then Banasur came there. Banasur attacks Aniruddha, and Aniruddha is captured. This news is, it reaches Dwarka, and Lord Krishna, Lord Balaram, and all the Dwarkavasis, they come here, and there is a fight. So, because Lord Shiva, I was talking to you about how Bali Maharaj requested the Supreme Lord to protect him, and Lord Krishna accepts that he will become the guard of Bali Maharaj. So, since Banasur did not have that affection to the Supreme Lord, but he had affection to Shiva, he requests Shiva the same thing. He tells, for all the tapasya that I did to please you, I want this benediction that you become the guard of my city. So Lord Shiva, he's trying to imitate his father, Bali Maharaj. But Bali Maharaj did it for the right person. And he's trying to do it for Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva is the guard of Shonitapur. And when Lord Krishna attacks, the Dwarkavasis attack, Krishna fights with Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva comes to the rescue of our Banasur. And in that fight, Lord Shiva he's defeated by Lord Krishna. He releases a Shiva Jwar. Krishna releases a Vishnu Jwar. And there is a fight between Vishnu Jwar and Shiva Jwar. And Shiva Jwar surrenders to the Supreme Lord. So anyway, this fight goes on. And finally, Banasur attacks Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna, with his chakra, he cuts off 996 arms of Banasur. There are only 4 arms remaining. And then Banasur understands, now I had it. And at that time, the mother of Banasur, she comes there, she is improperly dressed. And Lord Krishna, because he sees a woman improperly dressed, he quickly turns away. And as he turns away, Banasur leaves, escapes from there. So this Banasur, when he sees that, why was he spared? Was he spared because of the mother's intervention? Was he spared because of Lord Shiva's intervention? Why he was not killed? So many people were killed by Lord Krishna. So it is mentioned because Lord Narasimhadev had given a benediction to Prahlad Maharaj. 21 generations of yours will be liberated. So Banasur is one of them. So even though there is ample reason for Banasur to be killed, but Lord Krishna, see his own grandson, Aniruddha, has been captured by Banasur. But still, Lord Narasimhadev, Lord Krishna does not kill Banasur. And this is taken up by Prahlad Maharaj saying, you are saying everyone in my family is a devotee, and just see that is my influence and that's why you're glorifying me. But in my own family there is Banasur, who not only disobeyed Lord Krishna, but fought with Lord Krishna. How can I be proud of my position? I'm not a great devotee. And then he says that if I was so dear, then Lord Narasimhadev would have given me a lot of association. Hanumanji is such a great devotee. Hanumanji, as per the Ramayana, received association of Lord Ramchandra for 11,000 years. And as per Srimad Bhagavatam, Hanumanji received association of Lord Ramchandra for 13,000 years. So he's saying, they received so much association, but how much association I received of Lord Narasimhadev? As Lord Narasimhadev, he quickly disappeared. And if you say that the same Lord Narasimhadev is in the form of Lord Vamandev, and I am at Sutal Loka there, then many times I don't see. Many times I don't see Lord Vamandev. Why do you feel I had a desire to go to Naimisharanya to take darshan of Pitavas? Because I could not get regular darshan of Lord Vamandev here. So in this way, Prahlad Maharaj is an amazing combination. We started off by describing how fearlessness, Hiranyakashipu in today's shloka, he was saying that I am really feeling mortal. I am feeling fear, and in fact it seems that this boy is immortal. So he was trying to develop fearlessness based on the physical position, and Prahlad Maharaj did not try to develop, but he achieved fearlessness based on his consciousness, and we discussed how consciousness is very important. And then we discussed what is the source of the fearlessness, what is the source of that consciousness of Prahlad Maharaj. We discussed how it was primarily Shiksha, and yes, also Diksha, but primarily Shiksha. And then we discussed the importance of Shiksha and Diksha in our lives. And then we discussed how he is so much glorified by the Supreme Lord Narasimhadev and in other sections of the Vedas where Prahlad's superior position is glorified. And then we discussed how, what does it mean to follow in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj? Is it to undergo torture? Is it to be exposed again and again to danger? No. It is to lead the life that was led by Prahlad Maharaj before he underwent all that. And that was primarily Shravanam. And then we discussed about how Lord Krishna also emphasizes on proper Shravanam. Then we discussed about three personalities. Narad Muni received Shiksha from the Bhaktivedantas. He passed on that Shiksha to Prahlad, and Prahlad passed on that Shiksha to Bali Maharaj. And we saw Shravanam, Smaranam, and Atmanivedanam. And then we discussed how Prahlad Maharaj's extraordinary humility, that even though he is considered to be the best of devotees, he says, there are so many faults. I did not receive seva. I did not receive the constant association. And in my own life, in my own family, there is one person who opposed Lord Krishna. And even though I gave so many teachings to Bali Maharaj could not pass on those teachings. And maybe Banasur never heard those teachings, and that's why Banasur attacked Lord Krishna, and he attacked his family, he attacked his grandson. So in this way, Prahlad Maharaj, even though he's the most exalted person, he still comes back down to the ground level, and he says there is a lot more to achieve. Similarly, all of us, even though we are products of mercy, of the Shiksha Parampara, if you look at the Gaudiya Parampara, primarily it is Shiksha Parampara, it's not Diksha Parampara. Now we are so fortunate that living Diksha Gurus are available to take Diksha also. But there was a time when the Gaudiya Parampara was in danger because of Apasampradayas and because of attacks from the outside forces, especially because Gaudiya was Bengal, and Bengal was a hub of the outside forces. So there was a lot of danger there. So that time when Diksha was not possible, they took Shiksha. But we are so fortunate that we have Diksha and Shiksha, so we can all pray to the Supreme Lord, Lord Narasimha, that you have mentioned in 10.7.21 that we should follow in the footsteps of Narasimhadev. So let us follow in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj, that we can also take the advantage of what we are receiving from Srila Prabhupada in the Guru Shishya Parampara sincerely. And with proper Diksha and proper Shiksha, we can raise our consciousness. And in today's fearful times and in tomorrow's fearful times, not based on the position, but based on our proper consciousness, we can also develop the mood of fearlessness. And in this way, we can constantly chant the holy names of Lord Narasimha, we can chant the holy names of Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Narsingh Dev Bhagavan ki Jai. Shri Lakshmi Narsingh Dev Bhagavan ki Jai. Jai Prahlad Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
RG Media YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe.